Good morning, and welcome to everyone. Those of you who have joined us on Zoom, those of you who have joined us on Facebook Live, and those of you who are going to watch this later on in the week, welcome back to another session of Practical Parsha as we delve into the weekly Torah portion and derive and extract practical lessons for us that we can relate to in our own personal lives too. So lovely to have you online with us. We're going to delve straight in to the intriguing and fascinating portion of this week, Chayei Sarah, as we know it, the life of Sarah, which is ironic because we're actually discussing the passing of Sarah. We're not really focusing on the life of Sarah, and we'll hopefully address that as well. Why is it that the name isn't so consistent with the theme of this week's portion? But we learned something interesting about Sarah Imenu, about Sarah. What was unique to Sarah was that there were three miracles that featured in her life. What were the three miracles? The first was that there was a cloud that hovered above her tent on a continuous basis. That cloud was a cloud of glory that represented God's presence, that featured in Sarah's life, Abraham's life. And it was in her merit, in Sarah's merit, that the couple, that the family had this extra level of protection around their home, the cloud of glory that hovered around the tent. The second miracle was that the fact that the bread, the challah, remained in the home from Friday to Friday and remained fresh as well in their home. And the third miracle was that the candles that Sarah lit in their tent, in their home, on a week-to-week basis, on a Friday afternoon, those candles lit the entire week, miraculously. Similar to the miracle of Hanukkah, actually. We're approaching in the month of Kislev. So on Hanukkah, we all know the miracle that a small jar of oil lit the 8 days of Hanukkah. Well, that's the way it was with the miracle of Sarah, where the candles of Sarah actually lit the entire week. So these three miracles made Sarah's tent and Abraham and Sarah's marriage very unique. Sadly, when she passed on, as we read about in this week's portion, what happened to Sarah? She passed away. Why did she pass away? Because she was in shock by hearing the news of the Akedah, of Abraham almost offering Isaac up on the Akedah. And so Sarah received that as shock and she passed away. When she passed away, we are taught, suddenly these miracles, these three miracles, ceased to exist, ceased to continue among the home of Abraham, as well as the home of Yitzchak, who grew up in their home, their son. There no longer was the miracles of God, the cloud, the challah, and the candle. Why? Because they existed in merit of Sarah Imenu. They existed in merit of Sarah herself. Then we learn about the search for a wife for Isaac, for Yitzchak. And Abraham sends Eliezer, the servant, to go find a wife for the son, for Yitzchak, for Isaac. And without going into the depths of the storyline of how he finds Rebecca, how he finds Rivka, who happens to be a cousin of the family. But nonetheless, he chooses Rivka as the destined wife for Yitzchak, for Isaac. He brings back Rebecca to Canaan, to Israel, to meet the family and to meet Yitzchak. Now, miraculously, what happens is that Yitzchak marries Rivka, and guess what? Those miracles return into the home, into the tent. And suddenly, Yitzchak feels calm. He feels content. Because obviously losing a mother is traumatic, especially when God's presence, or at least revealed presence, evaporates or leaves the family. And suddenly, when Yitzchak marries Rebecca, Yitzchak marries Rivka, suddenly those miracles return. And Yitzchak now is calm, because once again, the cloud is present. The challah remains fresh, and the candle continues to burn, just as it was in the life of his mother, Sarah. Now too, it is the same for Rivka as well. So that's an important miracle. I'd like to discuss a few aspects and practical life lessons that we can take away from this journey, from these miracles that God performed for Sarah, because we too can learn from them. God, obviously, we don't see a cloud, or our bread definitely doesn't stay fresh, or our candles don't light, physically speaking, practically speaking. But the message of that, the practical lessons of that is equally applicable to us too. So let's try to unpack that for a moment. When we look at the tent of Abraham and Sarah, remember they couldn't build a permanent home because they were always traveling. And therefore they had to have a temporary hut in which they lived as they or encamped. And as they would travel, they would take down their tent and reestablish the tent. But they had a tent. It gave them whatever minor protection they needed. It gave them a tent. But God said, I'm going to add to it. In addition to your tent, I'm going to add a cloud of glory, a cloud that's going to protect you on a greater level, not just on a human level as you built your tent, but I'm going to add on a divine spiritual protection to that. And so they did. And that was a cloud that protected them. Let's move on to the food, the challah. Sarah was known to be extremely hospitable, extremely generous. We learned last week how Abraham prepared food for the angels that visited him in his tent. 3 cows just for the 3 guests, massive quantities that Abraham would put out and Sarah would put out as part of their generosity, part of the hospitality, but at the same time, that's limited to mankind, to human reach, right? Even if we're generous, it's generous within human capacity to be generous. Whatever we can afford, or we can supply or provide, that's what it is. Came along God and said, I'm going to bless you with a divine level of blessing. And I'm going to take your hospitality or your generosity or your food and your catering to a new level. I'm going to make your challah remain fresh the entire week. So I'm going to add on a dimension, a divine dimension to your hospitality and generosity. And finally, the candles. Sarah would light candles every week. That wasn't something new. She had candles burning every Friday. But candles naturally go out. So God stepped in and God said, the candles you light, I'm going to make them light even brighter, even longer for the entire week. So that's generally the structure of these 3 miracles. And what's important to highlight is that God didn't say that I will give you everything on a golden platter. God didn't say that you can, Abraham and Sarah, you can live out under the stars because I will protect you, right? You don't have to rely on a tent. You don't have to build a home because I'm going to protect you. That wasn't the way God worded it. Similarly, God didn't say no need to bake, no need to host, no need to prepare food because I'll do it for you. I'll prepare the food for you. I'll deliver the meat on a golden platter to your home every day. I'll deliver the bread for you with the like the milkman who arrives to the door with the milk bottles. So too, God didn't say, I'll deliver bread to you. I'll deliver food to you. What did he say? You'll go and make your bread. You'll go and prepare your food, but I'll bless that food. I'll bless your bread to last an entire week. And so too with the candles. God didn't provide candles. He didn't provide light. He didn't say to Sarah, sit back, Friday afternoon, as Shabbos arrives, enjoy yourself, relax, no need to stretch, no need to overdo yourself. I'll light the candles in the fire for you. He didn't say that at all. He said, you'll light the candles just like you've been doing all the way through. But I'll make sure to ensure that your candles will continue to shine bright for the entire week. In other words, what God is actually saying to us is, I want your input, and then I'll bless your actions. Then I'll bring a divine spark of success, of growth, of longevity, of continuity to what you're doing. But I need you to make that initial effort. And that's what he told Sarah. Hashem blessed Sarah with these 3 miracles, but these 3 miracles were dependent on the effort of Sarah Imenu. She had to continue doing what she was doing. And then God said, I will make you successful. It's a very powerful message. We see that in a similar story. There's a well-known story in Tanakh, in the stories of the journeys of the Jewish people. It's a story relating to Yehoshua, to Joshua. Joshua was battling a war. It was a war in Givon, and the sun was setting. But the war was still in action. Joshua had to finish this war before the end of the day, but the sun was setting. What did God do? He performed the famous miracle. It's called Shemesh Begivon Dom. The sun stood where it was. And therefore Joshua had more time in that day to conclude the war, to finish the war and to defeat the enemy. And the question there is also asked, couldn't God have defeated the war on their behalf quickly before sunset? It would have been a greater miracle. Why stop the sun and pause the day? Rather, finish the enemy, conclude the war on behalf of the Jewish people, and let the sun set at the normal time. That's not the way God wanted it. God said, I want man to play an important role here. You've got to make the keli, you've got to make the vessel, you've got to make the hishtadlut, you've got to put in the effort, you've got to go to war, you've got to fight the battle, Joshua and the Jewish people. What I'll do is I'll assist you along the way. I'll hold back the sun. I'll give you more time. I'll make your hands, your hard work successful, but it's got to be your hard work. And so it's true in all areas of life. When it comes to parnasa, it comes to a livelihood, we've got to work hard. We've got to put the necessary building blocks in place. When it comes to finding a shidduch, young girls and guys are waiting for the right one to come about. The right one's not going to come about. We've got to make the effort. We've got to put in the effort, make the ishtadlut, prepare the keli, prepare the vessel, give a call to a young lady, a young guy, reach out, speak to friends, explore opportunities of who's out there. You can't just wait for the guy or the girl to rock up. You've got to put the necessary building blocks in place, and then Hashem will make us successful, just like he does, or he did with Sarah Imenu and Rebecca and Rivka as well. And so that's an important point to keep in mind. This is what the title of today's class is called a bride's admission test, because that was the admission test of Rebecca. How do we know that Rebecca is the right person? How do we know that Rivka can fill in the role of Sarah Imenu? How do we know that now the house of Isaac and Rebecca can be a replica of Abraham and Sarah? Is if you have this in place. If the couple knows that they've got to put the effort in, they've got to put the necessary steps in, have a tent over your head, build a home, prepare your food, go out and be hospitable, and light your candles, bring light into the world, then Hashem will reply. And Hashem does, and then makes the process more successful going forward. That's the admission test. That's how we know that you belong to the family of Abraham and Sarah. You know, many of us, when hosting and preparing our homes for guests or for family, can really relate to this, because so many times we prepare a meal and we're expecting 5 people to come, right? But then what ends up happening is that suddenly a family member lets us know in the last minute that they're also going to come. And suddenly our guest list goes from 5 to 10, and we start stressing. It's Friday morning, and I have no idea how I'm going to accommodate all these people. I didn't prepare for them. I only prepared for 5 guests, which I thought I was going to be having. And now I've got 10 guests coming because the family doubled, or because our friends, or because there's another couple, or because there's kids that want to join along. Well, God says, you put in the effort and I'll make it work. And he does make it work. The food is enough. The food multiplies. There's enough space. There's enough food. Because when you put the necessary building blocks in place and you make the hishtadlut, you make the effort, don't hold back. Hashem will provide. Never say no to guests that want to join us. We'll make it work. We've catered for 5. It will work for 10. Don't worry. Hashem will make that miracle just like he did for Sarah Imenu. So too, he did for Rivka, and so too, he does for us as well. So that's point number one, is the combination of human efforts, which we need to do, as well as godly blessings, which is what Sarah merited to, and Rebecca merited to, and please God, we too should merit to the same. The second point that I wanted to discuss today is that when looking at these three items of blessings, and that is the tent or the cloud protecting us, then the food that we eat, the challah or the kitka, right, that's of Sarah that remained fresh. And then the candles that lit. Those three elements actually have practical representation in our own lives, in our own Jewish observance as well. You see, what is food? Food we absorb into us. The food becomes one with us. We absorb, we eat the food, we consume the food. On the other hand, the tent or the cloud that hovers over our heads, that is something that's above us, external to us, right? Distanced from us. I'll come to the candle in just a moment, but just look at that contrast of those two items that we're focusing on. The first being the food, the second being the housing. And it's the two aspects, internal, the food, external, the house. Okay? And how important is that as well in our own Judaism? The balance of internal and the balance of external. And we can apply this in many, many different ways. Let me give you just a few. For example, much of our Judaism is internal Judaism, meaning we are absorbing, okay? We are internalizing our Judaism. So our thoughts and our emotions and our prayers and our meditation is something very, very personal and very internal. The way I connect to God inside of me. That's an important part of Judaism. That's represented by the challah of Sarah Imenu, by the bread that we internalize, that we absorb, that we live within ourselves. But it's not necessarily enough. We also have to have an external presence, represented by the clouds of glory. The external presence represents the way I look on the outside. And the way I look on the outside is also very, very important. So that would include a yarmulke, for example, is part of external presence. Or a head covering for the women is also part of external experience. The external things that we do are so important. The way we show chesed or kindness towards others is part of my external performance or observance. And the two are so important. Many people say, especially in Israel, you hear this quite often, Ani Yehudi balev, I'm a Jew inside my heart. In other words, I don't have to dress like a Jew. I don't have to speak like a Jew. I don't have to behave like a Jew because it's inside of me. That's not enough. You've also got to have that external representation, the clouds of glory. There are many Jews, on the other hand, that do the other way. They dress the garb, they look all holy, they have the clouds of glory on the outside, but deep within, there's no values. There's lack of life. There's lack of ethics. That's also not ideal. There needs to be a combination of both. So that's one example of where we see the balance of internal, external. It's also the same when it comes to our understanding of Jewish observance. Many parts of Judaism are understandable. We can relate to them. We can connect to them. The way we do that is by our logic. We absorb, we calculate, we think it through. That's important. That's the internal part of Judaism. But there's also the external, and that is things that are illogical, which we don't understand, and we still do them because it's part of our tradition. For example, kashrut. Kashrut is not understandable. There's no logic to kashrut, and nonetheless we do it because it's something we've accepted. That's the external part of Judaism. And it's a combination of both. On the one hand, it's a religion that demands understanding and logic and internalization. On the other hand, it's also a religion that promotes blind faith and sometimes doing things that don't have any logic to them. And that's, again, another area of combination of the internal and the external. Two examples that we've shared. Then comes the candle. And the candle represents another dimension to Jewish life. And that is light. How important is light in our lives? Just imagine you're sitting down to a meal with your husband, wife, family, and it's dark in the room. And you have the table, unfortunately, load shedding. We can relate to this. You know, you set the table, you made an elegant dinner, an elegant supper, everything's laid out beautifully, but suddenly the lights go out. Boom. How frustrating is it? Everything's in place, but the lights aren't on. Doesn't it take away from the experience? It definitely does take away from the experience, because light adds so much to the activity, to the engagement, to the involvement of each person around the table. And so it is in our connection on a Jewish level. We spoke about the internal areas of Judaism, the logical areas of Judaism, right? We spoke about the external parts of Judaism. The external parts of Judaism too. Okay, that's true. But the light needs to be on. If the light's not on, none of it makes sense. If the light's not on, we connect to none of it. What is this light? The light of Sarah that lit in her tent. The light that we can learn from is a light of Torah. To live a Jewish life without Torah is very, very difficult, because then it becomes something that's related to tradition. And what happens if you're not a traditionalist? What happens if you don't feel obliged to follow the ways of your parents and grandparents? Well, then there goes tradition. Judaism is a lot deeper than just tradition. There's Torah, and the Torah is godly wisdom, and the Torah gives us food for thought, and the Torah motivates the way we think. The Torah gives us meaning and purpose to everything we do. And when I say everything we do, I mean both the logical and the illogical are lit up the moment you open up and you engage in Torah learning. Even if not everything you can connect to on a personal level, but the moment you engage in godly wisdom, it gives our human minds a much deeper dimension and deeper understanding and a deeper perspective to everything we're involved in as human beings on a spiritual level and on a practical, physical level too. And so the third lesson we learn from the candles of Sarah Imeinu is to light our lives up. We need to put the candle on, light the candle. The moment we light the candle, God will add on to that candle. He'll do what he did to Sarah. He'll enable that candle to light eternally. But we need to ignite that candle first. So for example, listening in and tuning in to our practical Parsha session, whether you do it live or you do it afterwards, non-live, right, offline, or online afterwards, that's one way of tapping in. Because by doing that, you're lighting up your mind. You're broadening your thinking process. You've suddenly got new perspective to think about, new meaning to bring into your lives. That's what light does. Tapping in to inspiration, tapping into meaning. Without Torah, it's very, very difficult. Without Torah, it's hard to function, not just spiritually or Jewishly. It's hard to function practically and physically. Because what? Get up every day, go to work every day, come home every day. But why? What's the meaning? What's the purpose? It's like sitting in a dark room. It's beautiful. Your job's there, your food's there, your spouse and family is there. But then what? The light's off. So we've got to put the light back on. And putting the light back on gives us the meaning and the enjoyment and the pleasure of the experience. And so that's what we're doing here today. You're tapping in to the wellspring of Jewish knowledge, of Torah's inspiration, of the candle. And when the candle's lit, everything else in my life starts to fall into place, because now I see that there's meaning to everything. So that's the practical Parsha insights. Just to summarize what we've highlighted today, we've spoken about the three miracles, which was Rivka's, the bride's admission test. Can she tick all three boxes, just like Sarah, her mother-in-law, had in her tent? Can Rivka do the same? And for us, it's the same. We're also blessed with those blessings. But We've got to make sure that we make the effort. When we make the effort and we do as we're supposed to do, God will bless those aspects of our lives too. And the second lesson we took away from this was that there's internal ways and there's external ways. There's internal, which is more personal, more logical, more part of me. And then there's external, which is the way I look on the outside. Sometimes the illogical ways of Judaism don't necessarily make sense, but I understand I have to perform them. And the lighting of a candle, which is the Torah learning, engaging in Torah's wisdom, God's wisdom, which lights up. It's the light in the room. It makes everything make sense. It puts everything into perspective. And that too is equally important as well. So thank you for joining us for a session of Practical Parsha. I look forward to engaging with you all next week round. In the meantime, have a wonderful week ahead. Keep strong, keep safe. And those of you on Zoom, just stick around for a moment. Those of you on Facebook, online, have a wonderful day. God bless, and over and out.